You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sarah J. Loureiro.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. And this episode is going to be really juicy, probably a little bit controversial for some people who just don't believe in debt at all. And I'm going to give you the goods because I was raised off of a belief that you cannot have any debt whatsoever. And I now fundamentally disagree with that, especially when it comes to the right investments for yourself and for your business. So let's go ahead and get started on, should you get into debt for your business? How much debt is okay for your business? And how do you ensure that you pay that debt off? Now, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a series over the next few episodes that comes specifically from my clients. So I literally just posted in both groups that I coach from what episodes people want to hear from me. And I'm adding all of those up and I'm going to give you the juiciest stuff. I absolutely love answering these questions for my clients and of course also for my community because you guys are the ones who are listening to this. So let's go ahead and talk about the debt topic, capital D, the D word, the word that no one likes to talk about, right? So first off, I really want to talk about, well, what is debt? Anyways, right? It's borrowed money. And debt can come from so many different things. You can borrow money from credit cards. You can borrow money from loans. You can borrow money from family members. You can even borrow money from your savings account. Okay? It's all debt, right? If you're borrowing money from your savings account from money that you did not make in your business, that's also business debt, is it not? And I think once you kind of look at it in that way, it becomes really easy to understand why you would do it, how to do it, all of that kind of stuff. Of course, some debt comes with higher interest rates than others, right? So if you're going into debt from your savings account to invest in your business, or if you're going into debt by selling your stocks for your business, if you're going into debt owing money to your mom from your business, chances are all of those avenues don't incur interest on them, right? So a lot of the times we wouldn't really call that debt. But technically speaking, in the definition of debt, that's still debt, right? Debt is borrowed money. It's money that you do not have for that specific thing. And so if we think about it that way, technically all money that you're paying into your business that you have not yet made in your business is debt, right? You're going and you're borrowing money from different places. There are places that you borrow money from that don't have interest, and there are places that you borrow money from that do have interest. Okay. And what I find really interesting about our society is that we are totally fine with going into debt for a university education, okay, that costs you tens of thousands of dollars by the end of your 4 years or however many years you're going to be committing to it. But we don't think it's appropriate to go into debt to learning a valuable skill set for ourselves and for our businesses, that's really interesting to me. It's also really interesting to me that we have no problems going into debt for buying a new car, which usually a lot of us don't have the money for, or we choose to not pay from our savings to buy a new car. And we're totally okay with that. We're totally okay with the interest that we have to pay from leasing a car or doing payments on a car. We're also totally okay with debt that comes from a home, right? So most of us don't have money to pay for a home in full. And by the time that we would be able to pay for a home in full, the home would just be so much more expensive. So we go into debt with our banks and we have interest rates from that in order to own a home and live in a home that one day we will eventually own. And so this whole conversation around business debt and should we go into debt for our businesses? I mean, my short answer to this is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. And over again, I would go into debt for my business. Why? Here's the thing. When you are going into debt on an investment that you are making for yourself, an investment into your skill set, that investment into your skill set has a really incredible ROI. A really, really incredible ROI. And even the client who asked me to talk about this topic, she has an incredible ROI from investing in her business already. It's exponential, the amount that she has. And so when we can think about our investments in our businesses as an ROI, then you have to also ask yourself, what is that ROI, not just from the time period that you're investing in your business, whether that be Facebook ads or a coach or a new team member, but what is the ROI of that as a snowball effect? And so I'll give you an example, my personal example and my personal journey with all of this. I first invested in my very first business mentor, and I didn't have the money from my business in specific to pay for that mentor. I had money in a savings account that was supposed to be going to a down payment on a house. And because that's what I was told, that was the only place that money could go. And I looked at those thousands of dollars that I could invest in her or keep that in my savings account and put that into a down payment. And I really did ask myself, well, what is the kind of life that I want? Do I want to risk this money to risk the potential of getting into a completely different life? What is that risk associated with? If this does not happen, how long is it going to take me to pay this off? What type of risk am I dealing with here? Because that was a risk, right? I was going into debt in my business, not necessarily with an interest rate, but with the savings that I had that I could have potentially invested in somewhere else. And by the way, I've had clients like this. I literally had a client who paid me almost $6,000 for my coaching program, told me this was the money that was supposed to go into the down payment for my house. I hope that this works. And from that $6,000, she made $23,000 within 3 to 4 months of us working together. And so that's an investment, right? That's huge. And I love hearing those stories. And I love hearing those stories from my clients and from my community because you get to see, okay, it's worth it to take a risk on yourself. And so going back to my risk that I took on myself, I looked at those thousands of dollars and I asked myself, okay, is this worth the risk? Is me finding out if I can actually have a different life, is that worth the risk? And then I also asked myself, 5 years from now, this is one of my favorite questions to ask myself whenever I'm in doubt of making a decision. 5 years from now, will I have rather, let's say it doesn't work out. So 5 years from now, will I have rather know that I took the risk and just say, okay, I took the risk. It didn't happen. I'm okay with it. Or not take the risk at all because I was too afraid to take the risk and then live in that regret, live in that, well, what if I did it? What if I actually did it? What if I did invest? And what if things did happen, but I didn't do it because I was scared? And usually if my answer to that question is usually, well, no, I'd rather just know that I did it, that usually means I need to do the thing that I want to do. And so for me, that first business investment where I was just like, I don't know if this is going to work out or not, turned into me making that investment back within 3 weeks of having the investment. And then that snowballed. And then that became okay, every time I invest in Facebook ads, I'm making 4 times as much back as what I invested, which then turned into, okay, now I have the skill set for myself. I know how to design websites. I know how to do social media. I know how to get on sales calls. I know how to build an email list. And that allowed me to fully book out my first business multiple times, which then allowed me to quit my 9-to-5, which then allowed me to move to Nicaragua. And so every single time that I've made those decisions and I've invested in myself, it's always proved to be a great investment. Of course, mind you, there have been, I'd say, a few investments that I've made in my business where it literally just money thrown down the toilet because they weren't the right investments. And I think that if we normalize that, and if we normalize the fact that we're not always going to make the 100% most accurate investments in our business every single time. It's kind of like going through life. You're not always going to make the right choices no matter what you do. You're always going to make mistakes. You're always going to have choices where you're like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have done that, right? Like maybe I shouldn't have gone out that night. Maybe I shouldn't have said those things to that person. And it's okay. That's a part of being a human. You're not 100% accurate all of the time. But my point here is that I did the investments. They gave me a return, which then increases your confidence in yourself and your ability to make those decisions, right? So do the investment, get the return. Now, I'm talking about this without interest rates. And I think the question here is the whole, okay, well, debt is bad. And then I have to pay all this interest on this debt. And then I just don't know how long I'm going to be having to do that for. And so then I would ask this, okay, is the debt plus the interest rate on the debt going to be worth the investment? If I were to go back to, I think it was 2015 when I made that very first investment, that was like a few $1,000s, and I would have had to take a loan out to make that investment. It doesn't matter if I took the investment out of a loan or if I took the investment out of the savings account. I was going to make it back. I made it back. I made it back within 3 weeks. Okay. And if I had 10% tacked on that, so let's say, for example, it was probably around $3,000 that I invested at that specific point in time. If that became $3,300 because of the interest rate that was tacked onto that, do you think I'd be sitting here and being like, nope, I shouldn't have taken that $300 interest rate? No, right? It was worth the $3,300. It would probably be worth the $3,500, whatever the interest rate that was tacked onto that. Of course, understanding that your interest rate has to be something that's pretty reasonable. But if that interest rate was tacked on, that wouldn't mean anything. It really wouldn't, because I made the money back. And not only did I make the money back, I also gained a skill set. I also learned something new. I also took a risk on myself, gained that confidence that I would have never gained had I not took that risk. So in terms of, is it worth it to go into debt for your business? You just need to ask yourself, do I believe that I will make this back? Do I reasonably believe that I will make this back? And do I believe that this is a reasonable investment? And I'll even give you an example of a bad investment that I made at the end of 2020. It did not give me the ROI that I thought it could give me. And let's say, for example, if I took a loan out for that specific investment and I knew I had to pay the interest on that loan, I still would have been okay with it. And the reason why I still would have been okay with it is because I was making an investment and I was making a bet on myself. And not all of those bets on yourself are going to translate into, thousands of dollars that you get in terms of a return. But I trust myself enough at this point in my business that I would definitely, hands down, take on a loan and go into debt for something if I knew and I trusted in my abilities and I trusted in the thing that I am investing in. And I think what happens a lot with business is that so many people go into these investments and they put money down and they're just kind of throwing money at their problems. And you want to make those investments. And if you are going to go into debt for your business, you want to make sure that you trust yourself, you trust the timing of it, and you trust in your ability with that investment to make it back and then some. And so considering it not just business debt, it's business investments, right? These are all investments. It's so amazing that you can even make these investments in your business. And so even just celebrating the fact that you can have access to that you can have access to loans, that you can have access to credit that will allow you to expand. And you guys, I was making a very average income in Toronto. Okay. Nothing fancy at all. I was working for a government agency. And with that first investment that I made, that was around $3,000, I made a 7-figure business out of that, right? It wasn't just that investment. It was multiple investments, but that first investment for money that I didn't have from my business translated into a 7-figure business over time. And so when you think about your business, when you think about what you're investing into your business, you also want to think about what is this investment going to help me with long term, which is why I love mentorship and coaching so much, because we're learning valuable skill sets. We're not just paying ads or paying someone to do something for us. And if it doesn't work, it's just like, well, now we're out of luck. You're investing in yourself. You're investing in your own knowledge in your business as well. No one can take that away from you. Now, the second part of this question was, how much debt should, quote unquote, should you be investing in your business? And then the third part was, how do you go about paying it back? So how do you go about paying it all off? And I don't think that there's necessarily a right answer here. I think it's going to really depend on each person. But for the first part of that question, how much debt? Here's what I would answer, and here's what I would do in my specific situation. I would see how much I want to grow within that specific year and see how much that those investments can leverage that growth. And if I don't believe the investments that I'm making are going to help me leverage that growth, or if those investments are going to be way too high for that specific growth period, then that probably means that I'm not ready to achieve the amount of momentum that I'm saying I want to achieve. So let's say, for example, if I'm making 6 figures a year and next year I want to start making 7 figures a year, that's 10 times as much. I want to start making 10 times as much. So your investment levels are also going to require a 10x factor, which also comes with a lot of risk because you don't understand how long it's going to take you to realistically do these things. You don't understand like what your time demands are going to be, because if you've only been at 6 figures a year, you've never been at multiple 6 figures a year. So you're not going to know what it feels like to be at 7 figures a year, right? It's very different. So what I like to do is I actually like to scale slowly. Although I do also, there's some years that I tend to double my income. But with that being said, I've never been the person who's been like, okay, I'm going to go from 6 to 7 figures in 1 year, because that's too much risk for me, too much risk for my nervous system. That's not something that I'm willing to take on. And that's how I usually assess the levels of investment and the levels of debt is, well, how much leverage is this debt going to give me to step into what I need? And what are the other variables that I might not necessarily be able to control? Because if I'm investing in this, there might be other variables that this investment needs in order for me to make the profit that I really want to make. And a lot of those variables are things like time, which is finite, right? And so you want to make sure that you are leveraging that debt and that investment and making sure that you have the time to also leverage that. And there have been programs that I've turned down because I don't believe that they're going to give me the value that the investment shows. And that's totally fine. And I've had people also say that about my own programs. Some people don't want to invest high ticket because they don't believe in high ticket, and that's totally fine. I have looked at specific masterminds to invest in for myself that are like $8,000 a month. And I look at that and I'm like, nope, I do not think that that's going to give me the ROI of the $8,000 a month. And that's just my personal opinion. And I just don't end up investing in those things. So you want to have your own standards in terms of how much you believe that debt is going to give you leverage. That's definitely what I would say about that question. And then the last question about how you should go about paying it off is what I like to do. And I was in this situation in 2020 where technically I created debt for myself because I was building a house. But what I like to do is when I start to get a surplus of money, so you invest, you do everything you can to create the ROI in that investment. Perfect. And when you start to get the surplus of money, you have to ask yourself, do I want to create more momentum and more leverage here? Or do I want to start leaning things out? Do I want to start focusing a little bit more on the profitability? And I'm the type of person who tends more towards the profitability than the momentum after I've made a really big investment. So I like to then say, okay, yes, I've made all of this momentum. I feel really good here. And this is the whole idea of like, I am enough and this is enough and, like I'm doing enough. And if I feel really good at that specific place where I can have like a regulation of my nervous system, and I don't really feel like I want more momentum within that moment, then I will say, okay, let's start to lean things out. Let's start to pay some of these things off. So getting a surplus, let's say, for example, you invest and then all of a sudden you sign like 5 clients, 10 clients, whatever, you make an extra 10 grand that you don't usually make in a month, right? Then you have to ask yourself, okay, with this new 10 grand, am I going to now reinvest this 10 grand to make my business grow even more? Do I have the leverage? Do I have the time right now to use this leverage and to create more momentum? Or am I now going to take this 10 grand and focus on paying off the 10 grand that is, on my business loan, let's say? Which one of these things do I want to do right now? And a lot of it really depends on that one finite variable, which is time, right? Like how much time do you have to re-leverage? How much risk do you want to take on to re-leverage and continue to leverage debt? And so I'm the type of person who tends towards, okay, let's lean out a little bit more. And then once I get another surplus, then I will reinvest the surplus. This has obviously worked for me really well because I've done really well in my business. But it's going to depend on the person. So I would always say, once you have the debt, made the income, how do you go about paying it off? It depends on when you want to utilize that leverage or continue to utilize that leverage, and when you want to kind of just like tighten the belt, so to speak. And it all depends on how much surplus income you have and what you want to do with that surplus income. So I hope that this helped everyone in terms of debt. There's obviously so many different opinions about this, and this is mine. And I happen to be a little bit more of a frugal person, but at the same time, I am an investor and I am the type of person who takes risk. And I don't believe that just through my frugality that I would be where I am today with my business, with the amount of money that I generate on a monthly basis, with the amount of money that I profit on a monthly basis. Only frugality will not get you there, but also only being someone who is a risk taker also won't get you there. You want to have your own unique balance, and your nervous system is going to tell you what your specific balance is there. So hope that this helps everyone. I would just encourage you all to continue to invest in your business. Honestly, most people I know don't invest enough, and that's why their businesses aren't taking off. So invest wisely. To me, in my opinion, business debt is good debt as long as you are leveraging it and making sure that you have the time to utilize that leverage, right? Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarahjlorero.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.